All right, well, hello everyone. Welcome to the intro episode of Dizzy Directors. My name is Lauren Clark.
And my name is Tori Moser.
And we are the co-hosts of Dizzy Directors, which is a podcast where we'll be talking to you about POTS, which stands for
Postural Orthostatic Tachycardia Syndrome. Woo!
Very long word. Yay!
But we got it, though. We got it. It only took like a year.
Yeah, to figure out how to actually say the word.
And I still may not be saying it right. Who knows? Don't look it up.
Nope, don't look it up. Just
Actually, maybe I shouldn't encourage people to not look it up. Look it up.
Yeah.
Awareness.
But POTS isn't just a medical condition. It is, well, I guess it would be considered a medical condition, but it's how some of us unfortunately now have to live our lives due to a post-pandemic world. And for some people may not even be a post-pandemic world, but before or after the pandemic.
Yeah. So, you know, the problem is a lot of us don't really know where it came from, and neither do our doctors. So we're just here figuring it out, trying to figure ourselves out. And the point of this podcast is to kind of help spread awareness and get people's stories out there, not just us, but the people that we're going to be interviewing. Dysautonomia is a very interesting condition that I personally had not really heard of before being diagnosed with it. And it's just interesting seeing how the autonomic nervous system in your body does not do what it's supposed to do and how it affects people differently. So Lauren and I, we both have POTS, but there's also other forms of dysautonomia, and, you know, there's lots of different ways it affects people. So we'll kind of be getting into that.
Yeah, we both are filmmakers, so we are primarily talking about this from the perspective of both being filmmakers. I've been a filmmaker probably since I was like 12 years old. Tori's been doing this for a long time, but Tori started out making, at least from what I remember, like Marvel edits on Instagram.
Listen, it was a different time back in 2018. It was the vibe.
It was the vibe.
Yeah, and you know, we're not going to talk about the characters I edited either, because there's a lot of the same character. So anyways, but you know, that's what kind of launched me into my filmmaking career, is I was always interested in making little backyard plays and movies and stuff like that, and I really got into fan editing as a teenager, you know, as you do to become a great person. And I kind of just fell into the filmmaking world, being interested in acting and editing, and now I am a producer, director, writer, and editor, and whatever else anyone needs, because I just step on set and I'm like, I'm here to help. Normally when I'm on other people's sets, it's because I'm an editor or first AD or producer, and I love it all. It's so much fun. So now I'm at Sam Houston State University studying film and television production, Bachelor of Fine Arts, and I'm a senior. So I'm almost done.
Almost done.
Almost there. I've been going to school for a while.
Yeah, and me and Tori have known each other for, what, 3, 4, 5 years now?
I want to say it was 2019, because I just came across a picture the other day of, like, you know, Liana's book?
Yeah, the group chat.
I was like, oh my gosh, because that's kind of how we met.
Yeah,
was through her and like through the whole group chat, which I totally forgot about until just now. But yeah, that's crazy, because it's been about 5 years.
Yeah.
Because it was in like about January or February, and we met through like this massive group chat of like all these people spamming all the time.
20 different people from like all over the US, and then
I know.
Then it kind of like sectored out into little groups, and then, you know, you, me, and Anna.
We were the best group.
But I mean, like, you, me, and Anna like all became friends after that, and then kind of just like spiraled of like you working on stuff with us, and like you know, and now we're kind of working together, which I love.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad, like, we haven't actually met in person, surprisingly.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Like, in all the times that we've known each other, like, I haven't had a chance to go down to Texas and, like, actually meet Tori. We've just FaceTime and texted and FaceTime and texted. Like, I know. Shame. But you also should come up here.
You'd probably pass out if you came down here, because it's pretty hot.
Yeah. I mean, weather in Texas, though, like...
But I wouldn't be able to handle the weather up there, because, you know, I've told you this before, every time I've ever touched snow in my life, I've gotten severely sick, because I'm in Texas, and and not even like North Texas, I'm in like mid-South Texas. So like
Yeah.
I'm used to 100 plus degrees. Now I hate when it's that hot because it sucks and I feel like crap. But, you know, when it gets down to like 40 or lower, that's super foreign to me. Like the other day I woke up and it was 30 degrees and I was so confused. Why was it that cold?
In Texas?
Yeah. I really don't know. I still don't know. And it only ever does like freezing rain too. Like it's very rare that it snows here. Which is weird. I don't know, maybe
Very
it's a good thing since I get sick, but you know.
Yeah.
When am I not sick? Let's
Yeah.
be honest.
Which unfortunately is another part of POTS, is that we are so immunocompromised that we get sick. Like,
yeah.
it sucks.
It's like our superpower, you know? If anyone gets sick, it's gonna be us.
Yeah.
That's a guarantee.
It's either you get sick or you don't get sick, and if you do get sick, it comes in threes.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, did you, were you always convinced that it was just like asthma before you got your POTS diagnosis?
No, it was weird because there was no, I just thought, I'm like, oh, like, it's my cycle, and I'm just having heart palpitations, because I had learned, like, I guess when I was, like, a junior, senior in high school, that you could have chest palpitations, like, with when you were ovulating, and I'm like, okay, I'm like, that's all this is, that's all this is, and
I
then it
learned
got
that just
worse.
now.
You didn't know that?
Certainly not.
Yeah, but I learned that when I was like a junior or senior in high school, because I felt it and it was bad, and I think I was like a senior in high school, and I went to the hospital and I had these like awful chest pains at one point, and they just played it off as chest pain, and then like they were like, oh, you have this thing called pleurisy, and it was after I had COVID, where basically like there was a piece where like fluid was supposed to not be touching each other, like in between like my chest wall and my heart, and it was basically rubbing up against each other and like creating this like heart attack like pain. And so they were just like, oh, it's pleurisy and just drink water and you'll be fine. That was like a year before my POTS diagnosis, I think in like 2023. So they diagnosed me with that like summer 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And then July 2022, through like that entire summer all the way through college, it was just bad. It was just really, really bad. And then I got a concussion fall freshman year of college. like really, like, didn't knock out, but like slipped on some tile and hit my head against a wooden chair bad. And then...
You shouldn't laugh. Oh my gosh.
No, you're allowed to, because it's funny to me, because not even months later, like in February of 2023, I had heart attack, like, symptoms again, went to the hospital, and they're like, it's chest pain! And I'm like, this is not chest pain. I was like, I don't know what this is, but this is not your average little chest pain. So then I went
feel
to
like that's a thing. Like, for most of us, we go to the doctors and they kind of like constantly just brush off, you know, which like you can't take it personally, because I know there's so many people that like, you know, exaggerate or maybe like convince themselves of things. But it is very rough, you know, and you've definitely gone through that a lot. Yeah,
it was either they first diagnosed me with anxiety. And I'm glad my mom went with me, because my mom was like, she already has anxiety. Why would this be an anxiety attack? Because all of my anxiety attacks are internal and not external. And the way I was like presenting, they're like, oh, you're just having an external panic attack. And I'm like, I know what my anxiety looks like. This is not just chalked up to anxiety. And I went to, I think it was like my nurse practitioner or something that like I'd been seeing since I was 4. And she's like, have you ever heard of this thing called POTS? And I'm like, I don't know what that is. I was like, but it sounds weird. And at first I thought she was like, I have POTS from like my friend smoking pot, like, which is like, because I didn't know what it meant. And I knew that pot was like another name for weed. And so I was like,
don't smoke pot, kids. This is how you end up.
But I was
full disclosure, I've never done that.
Yeah, same. But like, it was very funny, because I was like, is this because I was around like secondhand weed and just like hanging out with my friends because that's what they do? I was like, you know, is it something in the New York air? And she's like, no. She's like, it's a thing where like your body like, you know, goes up and down and like heart rate. And she handed me this sheet of like all the different symptoms, and I took a picture of it. And I just read it, and I was like, yeah, I've had all these symptoms. She's like, for how long? I was like, 6 months to a year. And she's like, oh. I was like, what's, oh? She's like, that's not good. I was like, I thought this was, and I literally looked at her and I started crying. I was like, was this preventable? She's like, no. She's like, there's literally nothing that you could have personally done to stop, fix, change, whatever. There was like no cause. They're like, we don't know where it's coming from, but you have it. And so now you need to go see a cardiologist. So I jumped from one cardiologist to like 4 cardiologists.
Oh,
and
goodness.
so I jumped because it was either, I got prescribed beta blockers, which is, if you have POTS, don't listen. Don't do the beta blockers. Don't do metformin. Don't do it. Don't do it unless you like absolutely positively need to. Don't do it. I feel like it depends on the person. I'm pretty sure that's what I have, but me, like, most of the time my blood pressure is not that changing. So for me, like, as a person who does take it, it slows down your heart, but it really doesn't change much else. So, like, I can be at, like, 70 beats per minute, which is pretty good, healthy, if you're, like, sitting up, but I can still feel awful because all it does is slow down your heart. So it gets rid of some chest pain and some, of a little bit of it, but for the most part, you're probably still going to go down. So if you're like, oh, this will change everything, it won't. But it can help that one thing. Yeah, I mean, depending also on the other underlying conditions that you may have, because I have other underlying conditions, which is why they prescribed me to not do the beta blockers or like any of the other, not kidding, 20 medications that they try to prescribe you when you have POTS, at least up here. In New York and New Jersey, they try to prescribe as many as possible to make whatever's happening stop.
I don't think they really care here in Texas. They're just like, go drink some Gatorade. That's what happened to me. They couldn't get an IV, and then they said, go home and drink Gatorade.
Which is an entirely different, I mean, just understanding the spectrum, it is 2 completely different entire things. Of here, they're like, okay, you can't do the beta blockers, that's fine. Let's do, and they thought it was like a weight thing, so they were like, do Wegovy. So they tried to put me on a weight loss medication. I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm like, I'm not doing this. I'm like, this is not, and it's not going to work. POTS is a very interesting, I feel like, word and disorder, and unfortunately people are now considering it a trend, but it's not really a trend. It's just because of COVID, a lot of people now have it more, and so it's harder to get into doctors. Like, to get in with my cardiologist, it is now, I believe, a 6 to 8 month wait unless you are a current patient and it's an emergency.
And I know, like, before I was diagnosed, I had heard of it because of TikTok. Like, I'd seen so many people. I remember, like, a few years ago. Now, as far as I know, I've had POTS most of my life, if not my entire life.
That's what, same here.
When I was younger, they were like, you're low on iron. Start eating those, like, chalk-like vitamins that did nothing. They were nasty. Yeah. By the way, I'm not bitter. But they were. And
I was on those same iron chalky medications. Now I'm switched to liquid iron.
Oh my gosh, no.
It doesn't taste as good.
But when I got older, same thing. It was like, oh, anxiety. And I knew I had anxiety and still have anxiety, but I've never struggled with panic attacks where they happen out of nowhere. They're always, like, built up.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really strange, that I was like, man, like, I feel like I'm getting things under control. Why is this happening out of nowhere? And because no one really knows. And, to be honest, I forgot where I was going with this. That's another symptom,
Oxygen not getting to your brain. That is another symptom of POTS, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's, I don't know if it's that or if it's just me, like, not having, like a mind sometimes, but, my memory is bad. I definitely have a photographic memory, so, like, I see faces all the time of people that I'm not sure who they are, but I know them. That happens very often, actually.
Me too.
But then, what are you supposed to do? Like, hey, so I kind of, like, I don't know. I try to use context clues to figure out who they are and where I know them from, which is so bad. But to be fair, when you are in college, you meet so many people in all these classes and productions, and sometimes you meet a person for 5 days on the set and you never see him again. Yep. And then 5 years later, you see them and they remember you, and you're like,
what's your name?
So sorry. I feel like actually a horrible person, though, when that happens. Like, if someone recognizes me and I don't recognize them, or like know their name, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a horrible person because why is their name not coming to me? But like, I'll recognize their face, but I'm like,
Right.
you look like a Bob or something, but I know that's not it, you know? So that happens a little bit too much. But, I really is very, evident whenever, I'm sure you feel this too, whenever you stand up, it's just so weird. Like, there's just a cloud, like, coming down on your head where, like, especially with, like, the visual part of it, because things are kind of, like, for me, I see things kind of shrink and grow a little bit, or, like, get blurry, kind of spots.
No, I feel like I'm hallucinating. Like, when
Yeah.
like when I'm about to go, because it feels trippy. Like, almost like you're on, like, and I've never done this before, but like, I've had friends who've done, like, shrooms, and they feel like they're hallucinating. That's what that feels like. I literally feel like the room is, like, spinning, and, like, I'm seeing stuff, and I'm like, mm-mm. I was like, we're not doing this. I was like, we're not doing this. Or my favorite is when I stand up, of, like, I will grab something, and my mom will ask me, like, are you okay? And I have to remind my brain is like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? And there's, like, a voice in the back of my head of, don't fall forward. Like, whatever you do, don't fall forward, or, like, sit back down.
I know. I feel like that's the hard part, because people ask me, like, people close to me, they'll be like, hey, are you okay? Because I guess there's just different signs. I mean, the obvious one is when I start twitching out, because everyone notices that.
Yeah.
But, people who are closer to me will notice, like, minor things and be like, hey, are you feeling okay? And not only is it, like, hard to tell sometimes, like, oh, am I just tired, or am I about to have an episode?
Yeah.
Especially if my heart rate is, like, down. Because taking those beta blockers, your heart rate does go down, so you can't always tell, like, would it be really high right now? Is it being prevented? And, so there's that, but then it's kind of hard to talk when you're going through an episode. Like, I swear, it's like, it's in my brain and it's happening, it's sending signals, but it's not coming out. So I will literally just, like, stare at you directly in the eyes, and you'll be like, are you okay? And I'll just be like,
Yeah, like,
I look insane.
They've been calling it, for me at least, like, silent seizures, where I'm like, I will just, like, go, like, and I can't control it or anything, and my mom will like, try to, like, push me to, like, wake me out of it, and the moment she does that, my body, it's weird, it's like a counterintuitive of, like, she'll push me, down I go. Like,
dang.
It's like, I am out. Like, even somebody, like, pushing me while I'm in the middle of an episode, like, my body just, like, I just fall, and, like, they gave me exercises to do, like, when I had POTS, of, like, they told me to squat to like, activate my glutes. It's doing the opposite, because the moment I stand up, down I go. And I'm like, these exercises are very counterintuitive.
Yeah, I feel like, honestly, anything that kind of cuts off your leg circulation, like, right now, I'm sitting with, like, my legs crossed, probably won't last that long, but anytime it's like that, or, like, sitting on, like, your knees, where, like, your legs are completely bent, that sort of thing, or honestly, just anytime being on the ground, like, I feel like some of my friends have just gotten used to this at this point. When I'm sitting down, when I get up, I'll, like, stand up and, like, hold on to the wall for a second, and you're kind of, like, letting, how, like, when you spin around a lot, and you wait for things to go back into place, it's like that, and then it's, people with low iron will probably relate to, even if you don't have POTS, what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
And then once it stops, it's like you feel feel the blood drop, you suddenly feel so, like, light up here, but then heavy in your feet and stuff. So, it's really interesting. The other thing about, because if you are not aware, viewers, POTS, pretty much the main factor of it is whenever you are against gravity, which is 24/7, but especially standing, all the blood will pull down at the bottom of your feet, pretty much. And so then your heart is working extra hard to get the blood back up here. So that's what causes brain fog, heart palpitations, all sorts of stuff. I remember back in 2019, so we'd probably just met, honestly. I had this surgery on my foot, And I had like a boo and then a cast for a while.
Yeah.
And I remember when I got the cast off, there was one time that I was like standing up or something, and like my feet were so red and like purple. And I was like, dang, I wonder if like they did something wrong. Cause like, I never just look at my feet, okay? I was like looking at it because, like I just had this surgery a couple months ago, whatever. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, I wonder if there's like something wrong, because like they had already like accidentally, well, I don't know if maybe it was on purpose, I don't know, they cut like some nerves, so like I can't feel like part of my foot. So I was like, maybe it's like that sort of thing, whatever. But I was like, oh my gosh, those do not look good. Like, I don't know about that. And so looking back, it's so funny because there's so many things like that and my supposed asthma that came back and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, it all makes sense, Like, oh, I'm not dumb. It's brain fog. Or, oh, I'm not just tired all the time. I am getting sleep. I am eating healthy. It's just, you are tired 24/7. And I constantly got dark circles under my eyes. I mean, when I'm on set, like, even just in regular life, everyone's like, oh, let's go out and do something late at night. And I'm like, I'm falling asleep right now. I'm so sorry. I gotta go. And I feel like such a party pooper, but
no, same.
My social battery already runs out quick, but my physical battery is out after a day,
Yeah.
Like, I spend the entire weekend resting up, and then Monday comes, and like halfway through Monday, I'm like, oh, I'll fall asleep right now.
Yeah. Like you could have all of the sleep in the world, dude. You could be literally doing everything right. You could be drinking, the gallon of water that you need to drink, the 8,000 grams of salt that you need to add to said water to make sure that you actually stay awake. And it's just not happening. And like, I feel bad for my friends because they're like, we should go out and party. And I'm like, I'm going to go home.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go sit in bed and sleep. And they're like, but why? I'm like, because I'm going to go sleep. And then I end up taking a nap when I go home. And then I talk to my online friends that are, in other time zones. And I talk to them for like till 2:00 in the morning because I took a nap. And then I feel bad because it's like, I'm not hanging out with my school friends. And it's like, I don't want to pass it on your floor. It's like,
honestly, that's just my biggest fear. Like, I hate when it happens in front of anyone else, and I will like use all of my energy to wait until I get home to like let it happen. Because for me, I don't know if it's like this for you, but I feel like most of the time I kind of treat it like nausea, where like, how you get that feeling, you're gonna throw up. Like, it's not just nausea, it's gonna happen.
It's the same thing with POTS, because my brain will start like throwing cursing bombs in the back of my brain. I'm like, I was like, oh no, I'm like, it's starting.
Yeah.
I was like,
and you're trying to like push it,
Yeah.
And there's some people that I'm comfortable enough, like, hey, I can let it happen right here or whatever. But for the most part, like, I just fear it happening. Anytime I feel like it's gonna happen, I'll step out of class and like go lie on the ground or something. And all my professors, they know, because I do the whole disability accommodations thing.
I was gonna say, and how are your professors handling it? Because I know sometimes like it depends on the professor. If like sometimes they can be really good about it and then really not.
Like, yeah, I mean, I feel like for the most part, because I've only started the accommodations thing last semester, and even the professors that I thought were like intimidating or may not be very like understanding, they were very understanding. So far, all of my professors here at SAM have been pretty great, and a couple professors, have gone out of their way to like encourage me or be there for me. I had this one professor, she was over my independent study actually. And when I had my meeting with her and told her about it, she literally like took all these saltines out of her bag and like shoved them in my face. Was like, take these, I don't need them. And I was like, why do you have saltines? And I don't need your saltines, I'm okay. Because I was like, sometimes I eat salt and it looks really weird, but it's just like part of this. And she was, like that. And then my other professors have just been, at the very least, very understanding and like, well, let me know if you need anything or whatever. One professor, like an amazing professor I had last semester, in the meeting, he was like, I just want to encourage you, you said you want to be a director, you can totally still do that, even with, this condition. I've seen people with all sorts of disabilities,
Yep.
Still be able to do it. And I just thought it was so nice of him. And I feel like that's a great reason to do this podcast too, because I know there's more filmmakers out there with disabilities or people with POTS that feel like maybe they can't follow their dream. And I would love to be able to at least use mine, even though I'm still figuring it out, to encourage other people, because I feel like God, not everything happens for a reason, but you can make something out of everything. Sometimes God lets you go through things so you can use that to help other people. So I feel like at the very least, and I love having you because you definitely know more about it than me, because you've known about it longer. I've been here being sent all over the earth. But, it was very nice to hear from you, knowing that I have someone who not only understands what it's like to have POTS, and like every other medical condition from being born too early, but also is a filmmaker, and someone who understands the struggle of trying to direct or produce and be on your feet all day when you aren't a normal person, like you feel tingly and you feel like you're gonna pass out, and you can never have enough water. And then on top of that, if you are drinking enough water, so many times on sets, there's no restroom, or there's not enough time to go to the restroom. And, because we're on student films, and,
unless you're filming in the soundstage at your school and the bathroom is, like, right there, you're stuck. Like, it's...
And, so it's just one of those things that it makes it that much harder. But it really does help having, like, a support system. The few friends that know me and my family and stuff, they'll be like, hey, drink water, or hey, whatever. When you're on a road trip, it kind of sucks, because you're like, whoa, pull over every 5 minutes. But
my family just stopped road trips altogether. They were like, the moment we found out POTS, they're like, road trip stop. They're like, and if we are going on a road trip, you're just flying. Like,
yeah,
like that's just what we're doing. I was like, okay.
Yeah, we still gotta go to Disney though. One day when we make movies and have the money. So Disney, hire me.
Hire us.
Yeah. We'll make the live action Tinkerbell movie. I'm telling you right now. I'm an expert. Okay, do you want to go through some of the questions that we got?
Yeah, I mean, let me pull up the questions that
I have them pulled up too, if you want me to read them.
Yeah, just read them, and like we can totally... I know Anna sent me one, so I'm gonna pull up hers.
I love Anna. I can't believe we haven't met in person either.
I know. Listen, by the time when we film the sequel, which is almost done being written, we're going to be having the table read pretty soon, so I'm going to have to text you and invite you to that.
Okay.
But I'm excited for that. But yeah, she sent a really good question, and but I want to do yours first, because I know you got a few more than me.
Okay, so the first one is, what is POTS? Which we kind of covered, but if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I mean... I feel like we explained it in a way that, like, seems pretty good, but I mean, we can totally explain it again. Of like, POTS is essentially if you stand up for too long. See, this is part of it. I'm not having words. If you stand up for too long, or if you sit for too long, your body can kind of just head into a really weird space of where your heart rate gets too high, and you can kind of feel yourself getting really, really dizzy. It doesn't really happen, however, for people that are sitting for too long, unless you've like really have sat for too long. But most of the time is like if you stood for like 15 to 20 minutes, that's when it gets bad. And then you unfortunately have this thing called passing out, or fainting. It truly depends. POTS looks different for multiple different people. I've seen some people have seizures with their POTS. I've seen some people just pass out. So kind of just depends on what kind of POTS you have.
Yeah, I think a good way to describe it, if you aren't familiar with the normal, average heart rate, basically most averagely healthy people, now if you work out a lot, yours is probably lower than this, but typically if you're lying down, you'll be anywhere from 50 to 70, normally around just the 60s, and when you're standing up, you'll probably be about 70 something, maybe 80 something, even when you're nervous, may even go to 90. For us, usually, I believe we have about the same range.
Yeah.
I can be lying down and be at 50 something, or, more likely it's going to be like 70 something. But then when I stand up, depending on the day, I could be at the lowest 100 or maybe 145 or something, and that's if I'm not moving around. That's just standing up. So when I stand up and my watch starts buzzing and it's red and it's, 35 to 45 or something like that. There was one day I stood up the other day and I was just at 150 standing there, and I was like, why are you overreacting? Like, why is my heart doing this? But then sometimes I stand up and I'm just at 110 and I'm still in the green for me, but it's still vastly different than a normal person. And that's how they figured out I even had POTS, is because they had me do sitting standing tests.
Yep.
And when you stand up, your heart rate rises because your heart is pumping blood. But if it is over like 100, like 10 minutes later,
that's not normal.
Usually shouldn't be like that unless you are very anxious or moving around a lot or anything like that. So that's kind of an outlook into that, because basically how you feel like after you run like a super long race, a 5K or even a 1K, and you're like trying to catch your breath and everything, that's us standing up.
Yeah, my laying down heart rate is normally 80. Like when I'm laying in bed, like haven't like just woke up, like I keep a heart monitor next to like the pulse ox next to me, so I just like put it on my finger, check it, and like all I could have done is just rolled over, and it's like 80, and I'm like, I rolled over. You should not be 80. And then the moment I stand up, it's like 120, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, you are completely unhinged. I'm like, you just don't want to do it today, and that's fine. But I need you to go down for a little bit longer so I can actually like get out of my apartment and go to class.
Yeah, I feel like that's the other thing too. You mentioned like rolling over. Like I'll be laying down flat and I'll be fine, and then I'll turn on my side and all of a sudden it starts buzzing, and I'm like, excuse me?
I'm like I just moved.
Yeah, and then you feel like the breath taken out of you too, and it's like, give me a break.
Yeah.
But for those of you who don't know, it is chronic, so we're stuck. But it's fine.
I got told that this was going to be 6 months to a year.
Yeah,
we're officially at I think I've had this since like before COVID. I got my first concussion when I was 5, and they think mine is concussion related.
Yeah, I would totally believe that. I think, again, there's just not so much known about it, so it kind of makes it hard. But, I know, like, my first doctor's appointment that I got diagnosed, they were like, hey, you may grow out of this, and, they answered, like, all these questions, blah, 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 and then last time I went, they were like, no, this is chronic, you won't grow out of this. And to answer the next question we have, they told me it would be genetic. So I have not gotten it from someone else, but if I had kids, it would go to them.
Yeah, we're not even that far. Like, I literally just got the testing done for something else, and so I'm like, is my POTS genetic? And they're like, oh, we can't test you till, like, May. And I'm like, because every single person, at least from where I'm getting my genetic testing from, which is like one of the biggest hospitals where I live, everybody's getting genetic testing for cancer. Because like in my area, the cancer rate is high. And so getting testing just in general for genetics, including POTS, is like extremely hard.
Yeah. I just feel like in general, not a lot known about it. No one really knows what they're doing. The only reason I'm even diagnosed is just because my cardiologist, happened to know what it was.
Yeah.
And, because I went to several cardiologist appointments where they were doing all sorts of tests on me, because they were like, well, we have to make sure it's not something, super bad, doing the echocardiogram and the heart monitor and all that insanely expensive stuff, just for them to be like, yeah, they're all clear, do this sit-stand test. And then they were like, oh, you have POTS. I was like, you told me I did all these tests with all this money for you to find out from that? But the first guy I went to was just like, you just need to drink more water. You're dehydrated. And I was like, now technically that was true, but it's not like it would have fixed it.
No.
So thankfully, my amazing mom, who will stand up for me and the doctors,
mine too.
She was like, No. All she does is drink water. Like, I don't drink soda or anything.
Me either.
So she was like, all she does is drink water. And she's healthy and all of this. Like, I know you're not telling me she's just dehydrated and has anxiety. You know, why is her heart like this high and everything? Because I had gotten like a blood pressure machine to start measuring it.
Yeah, me too.
And because they were like, you know, if your blood pressure's changing a lot, you probably have hypotension. And, you know, and then I feel like I think the main difference between that and POTS is the blood pressure. So with POTS, your blood pressure doesn't change that much. Now for me, I do have to continuously check it because when I do take those beta blockers, it lowers my blood pressure. So I'm over here like, eating salt, you know, to get it back up. But I really haven't had a problem with it being way too low or way too high.
Oh, mine's the opposite. When I'm at a POTS flare, because I was born with a low, like genetic wise, low blood pressure on my dad's side, and so when I have a POTS flare, my blood pressure skyrockets. I mean, completely skyrockets, and I'm like, I don't feel good. Like, this isn't. I was like, everything feels wrong, and my blood pressure feels high. And, like, there are times where I've gone and my blood pressure has been, like, 130 over, like, 90.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom is like, are you good? Like, what's up? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, this is weird. And then we'll check my heart rate, and she's like, oh. She's like, you're having a POTS flare. Okay, yeah, like, that's all this is. You're just having a POTS flare. And I'm like, I don't like you. No, thank you.
Yeah. Honestly, I do really appreciate it when people close to me are more nonchalant about it, because I don't like it being a huge deal, and I don't like people freaking out. So whenever it happens, which has been often lately, but
Same.
you know, like my friends or my boyfriend, they'll just be like, you know, hey, you know, just lay down, I'll get you some water, take a pill. Like, they'll even check my watch or whatever. You know, and it's very comforting, because when someone else is like freaking out, which is valid if you don't know what's going on, but I do try to tell people, you know, beforehand. It's so much easier when people are just like chill and, you know, they're not freaking out to where it's making you nervous and anxious and making it worse and everything. So that's always kind of nice.
I have the opposite.
People, you know,
my friends at school freak out
every time.
Even though I've told them, and they've known since like a year now. Like, I've known these guys for like since like my freshman year of like college. They still freak out, and I'm like, guys, you freaking out literally is not helping the situation. Like, it's not helping. Whereas like my Power Ranger friends who are like 10 plus years older than me that are like, hey, is Lauren good? Does somebody need to call her? Like, because if I'm on the phone with them and I pass out, like, I gave one of them like the number of my mom, because my mom lives with me, and so like they've called my mom before. My mom has like slammed open the door to like wake me up out of it, and that works, because like I legit, when I'm out, like I can't hear anything, but I've had like my friends call me and I'm like, what? They're like, you passed out, and they've just started timing it over the phone. And like they're not close. Like, all of them live in different states, but like my school friends completely just freak out, and I'm like, this is not helpful whatsoever.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it just kind of depends on the person, you know, how they take those kind of situations. So okay, so the next question, I think we're going to skip the third one because we kind of already answered that one. How does POTS manifest for you?
Yeah.
Okay. What is good for those around you to know? Like, what can help?
Ooh. I mean, I feel like I can answer this. I think what's good to know and what's good to help, and this is going to sound funny, just have salt on you 24/7. Like, even if that means you have like a stupid little salt shaker that you stole from like the dining hall, or like
let's not encourage stealing.
Yeah, not that, but you know, just maybe just a salt shaker, or like if you have a salt shaker on you. I know some people sometimes keep like salt packets. Like, if they want to season their food, sometimes that works too. That is a very good resource to have. That kind of works. I mean, I know that's what works for me, because I always, for some strange reason, always have water. So like, even if you have water for like the person that has POTS, those are very good like things to have too.
I would say, for me, I normally just tell people like, you know, hey, as long as my head doesn't hit anything.
Yep.
I mean, I prefer to take care of my body too, but mostly, you know, the head. You know, it's very rare that I just fall over standing up. I'm normally able to get myself down, but I'm like, you know, as long as my head's good and
Because
you know,
concussion makes POTS worse, unfortunately.
yeah, and everyone should know this regardless of POTS. Don't try to make someone drink water when they're unconscious or just having a seizure episode, whatever it is, because you're gonna drown them. So don't do that. I haven't had anyone try to do that, but that's because I've been very like, hey, don't do this. I've seen this happen before. Don't let that happen. But you know, for me, it's more just like, hey, let it happen. You know, I guess make sure I'm breathing.
Yeah.
But besides that, when I wake up, I'll need water or Gatorade and, you know, my pills and some salt. And that's typically what I tell people. And, you know, when I'm by myself and I'm trying not to have an episode, I'll like raise my legs. But I remember, like when I first started dating my boyfriend, he was asking me like, what can I do? And, I started to say, you know, he was like, what position should you be in? And I started to say, you know, you could raise my legs up like against, like on a pillow or something. But I decided against that because like no one else but you can feel if your legs are losing feeling. So if they're too far up and there's not enough blood going to it and your legs are falling asleep, no one else is going to be able to tell that.
Yeah.
So if you're like under, you know, for me personally, I was like, oh, I don't think that'd be a good idea if I was like under and I had them up because no one would be able to tell if, you know, blood is even still in there or not.
Right.
For the most part, it's just kind of like lying down, letting it happen. You know, they'll time it or whatever. And then once I wake up, it's just water, Gatorade, salt, pills, whatever, you know. But it's kind of a long recovery time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I would say. Do you feel like the last question I have is, does temperature affect POTS? I know that if you guys don't know, you have very little, if any, temperature regulation when you have POTS or other forms of dysautonomia. So we're going to be a lot hot. We're going to be hotter than you, and we're going to be colder than you. You know, if it's cold, we're going to be freezing. If it's hot, we're going to be sweating so bad. But do you feel like the temperature in itself, besides the actually being cold or hot, affects the other symptoms for you?
I do, because I know it's like, and I'm curious to see what it's 41 degrees right now in New York, and it's supposed to tonight get to 26 degrees.
I'm going to see how it is here.
I was going to say, it's supposed to get to, I'm going out to dinner with my parents later, and it's supposed to get to, it's going to be 32 degrees.
It's 75 here. Texas!
Woo! Temperature does severely affect the weather, and just like, not the weather, oh my gosh, but like, it messes up with like having dysautonomia and having POTS, because I know the worst episode I think I ever had was back in like January, of it hit 22 degrees in New Jersey with wind chill. And I experienced the weirdest thing ever of having POTS flare and hypothermia all at the same time.
Yikes.
And that is essentially where I was standing out in the cold, and I had prepared myself. I had like brought a jacket and everything, but I was still cold, and I got back in the car and then wrapped myself up in a blanket, and then I woke up the next morning after being on set, and I was sick. No fever, but just sick, and just like in a really bad POTS flare. Whereas like over the summer, at least last summer, I have no idea how this summer is going to affect me, but last summer it was bad. Like, I wasn't passing out bad, but it was like I was getting dizzy, and standing up for long periods of time was hard, and like it was hard. I know that temperature can severely affect, but especially with also like, there was a section in New York when we were dealing with global warming of when it was going from 70 degrees to like 50, and then from like 50 degrees to like 20 degrees. And so I'm like, this is crazy. And so because we were dealing with that every day, off and on for 2 weeks, I had like the worst POTS flare of my life, where I was sick and I had like a cold and then the flu, and I was just like, I can't do this. And I stayed home. This was like during, I think like, it was like right when school was just starting, like fall semester. And I was like, I have to stay home. I was like, I can't do this. I was like, my body doesn't know what to do with itself, and it's making itself sick by the temperature just affecting everything else around me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I would agree. I honestly thought it'd be a lot harder when it was hot. Because I mean, last summer when I was first diagnosed too, I was filming my film Project Z, and it was always over 100 degrees every single day that we were out there, and we were just filming outside, every single day in the beating sun. And it's Texas, so um, it like the temperature was bad for everyone. You're worried about getting sunburned and sweating and being dehydrated and all of that, and I was trying to make sure everyone was staying hydrated. But for me, I felt like absolute crap every day that I got home. Pretty much every day on that set, I ended up passing out at one point or another. And, because even when you are drinking enough water, like, for people with POTS, we're supposed to drink 3 times as much as a normal person.
Yep.
And then on top of that, you're losing water, sweating, and all of that. So I was under the impression, like, yeah, winter's going to be way better. It's blah, blah, blah. And then winter comes along, and I think we've established I'm not a winter weather gal.
Nope.
But, Texas is really weird already because the temperature fluctuates so crazily. Like it was 17 degrees a few months ago, and then like 3 days later it was like 90 something. So you really don't know. You can't go out without checking the weather. It's very annoying.
Yeah.
I think it's all a ploy for like weather people, they're only doing this so we have to check their apps. That's my conspiracy. But whenever it got cold, and thankfully I wasn't doing a mini mester this year during Christmas break, because I felt like so bad like the entire Christmas break when it was really cold. Right now it's obviously not that cold. Last week it was, but now it's not. It's like a very nice weather, but I just found myself not just being cold, but also feeling really bad, as if I was losing water like I was in the summer.
Yeah.
So, I was looking forward to like enjoying feeling great.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. So, what are you gonna do?
Yeah. Okay, I have 2 more questions here. So there's a question that says, where did the name Dizzy Directors come from?
I don't remember. I think like we were like brainstorming a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And because it had several names before this.
Yeah.
And I think I said something like, we ought to make it somehow about like we ought to use an adjective to describe like people with POTS, like something like dizzy, or that's all I can think of right now.
Yeah, I mean, then, the original name was Potscast, but that was taken. So
yeah. So I mean, I think I was saying like, hey, we ought to do something that has to do with POTS and has to do with filmmaking, even though not everyone we're going to be interviewing are filmmakers, because that's who we are, and I think it's an interesting aspect to see filmmakers with, specifically POTS syndrome and, how it's working and everything. So, I don't remember who came up with it, but I know that that's kind of the mindset we were on.
Yeah. And then the other question, which I got from Anna, which is, do you think having POTS is hindering your creativity as a director?
In a way, maybe. Now, okay, so on one end, you have this life experience that a lot of people don't have.
Right.
That sort of thing always sparks creativity. And, it doesn't, something like this doesn't hinder your ability, not does hinder your ability to think, but it doesn't really hinder your creativeness. But at the same time, when you deal with something like this or any other sort of chronic illness or disability or anything like that, when you are having to take more breaks, having to sleep more, not being able to think clearly at certain moments, it definitely does affect just the work aspect of it. Because you can't always get as much done as you want. Like, I know there are several days, because I work on school and films or whatever every single day. You know, I have to go through the weekend, and, you know, your body needs a break on weekends, but college students, you can't really do that.
No.
And, you know, there are several days that I'm like, all right, I need to get this and this and this done. And, like, halfway through the first thing, I'm like, going out, you know, having an episode, and it's very, very frustrating to me. Like, at that point, I'm over the episode. I'm like, whatever, that can happen, but it's more frustrating to me that I'm wasting precious time where I could be working on this or whatever, because, you know, to me, I'm a very organized, planned person. I need to get it done, like, now. If I don't get this done today, my life is over, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, to me, it's just really frustrating. I don't think it affects my creative thinking, but it does affect the ability to get things done sometimes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, same here. Like, I yesterday got up at like 8:30 in the morning because I had a meeting with like one of my advisors, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna meet with my advisor, and then I'm gonna screenwrite. And I had figured out the ending for a feature that I'm writing, and I had texted my producer, and I was like, hey, like, it's good to go. Like, when should I send it? Should I wait? He's like, no, send it today. So I literally stayed up until like I think 10. And then I went upstairs. Like, I had been sitting in my living room all day, just like watching all the inspiration movies that I had chosen for the feature. And then I literally got upstairs, talked with my friends, I think for like 15 minutes. And I was like, I'm going to go to the bathroom. And the moment I stood up, blacked out. And then like woke up 2 hours later, because my episodes unfortunately last hours. They've been transitioning from like minutes to hours, which like sucks. And I woke up around like 2:00 in the morning, and my friends were off the call, and I was like, what in the world? I woke up, like, the room was spinning when I woke up, and like I had to collect myself and like close my eyes, and then I like opened them, and I was like, I passed out. I was like, I worked so hard, like, and sat all day to not pass out, and then proceeded to pass out, all because I worked too hard. And so like there is that also of like, if you work almost like too hard, and I mean, you could literally be drinking water, taking all the breaks in the world, it's just not. And I think it depends. I know, but like creativity wise, it's been the opposite. I've been more creative, but because I have POTS, has it been more difficult directing on set, even if like the sound, like, because I've been shooting at a soundstage on purpose because it's cold, but you could be standing for too long. The type of lights you could be using could be making the space too hot. Like, it just depends. And so I don't think the creativity, like I said, has been hindered, but I think being on a film set makes it harder.
And I think the stress definitely probably affects it too, because, you know, like, stress can very much affect you physically, and as a director or a producer, when you're running around and every single person is asking you all these questions, as they should, you know, I'm not discouraging that, but it gets overwhelming, and you're constantly being pulled in a million different directions, and there is no time to not feel well. There's no time to drink water or eat or go to the restroom, which unfortunately is just the case in, you know, a lot of filmmaking, especially student filmmaking. You know, it isn't union, and you know, you're already not getting paid and everything, which is, it's fine for now because I can afford to not get paid. You know, and it's very much fun. I love it. But you know, it's not unionized, so it's not super protective of like your time, or like giving you bathroom breaks or food breaks or whatever. A lot of times there's no crafty because we're all broke college students, things like that. You know, which is just how it is. It's part of the experience, but it does make it a little bit harder when you are going through something like this.
Yeah, I mean, in my case, I go to a very rich kind of school, so we always have crafty. But even if you have like,
never mind. Up there in New York.
But I mean, like, you could have literally all the crafty in the world, like, snack-wise, but you forget, like, the drinks and stuff, so then you have to go to the vending machine. So, because
or you just forget to eat it, you know, I'm sure. Like, if you're running around, you know, there could be all the food in the world, and you just are too busy.
I still have leftover snacks from, like, 2 sets that I was on, because we didn't have time to eat, because we were just rushing to go. Like, and I had provided crafty for my set, and I still had like a bunch left over, so I was like, okay, like, we'll use it for somebody's set the next day. and then we used it for somebody else to set the next day, but we were rushing through that literally nobody stopped to like eat it. So I was like, I'll just save it for the next one. So I'm saving it for like 2 shoots that I'm doing this upcoming week. But I mean, you could literally, I mean, even for crew that like don't have pots either, I've had crew members that have passed out and like have been tired because of like the tungsten lights that we're using, because those are hot, like physical lights. Or like, you know, because stuff is heavy, like it's very draining in a way also.
Those tungsten lights are crazy, because there have been times where like people are literally like constantly almost touching them, and I'm like
and like burning themselves, and I'm like, there are gloves in this box that I pulled out specifically for you to use so you don't burn your hands.
Yeah, and for me, every time I'm on a set, I usually have if I'm the director or AD, I'll have like a meeting beforehand, kind of for safety and also just organization. I'm like, please stay in your lane, because again, it is a student set normally. You know, so it's like, hey, if you are not the gaffer or grip, you should not be touching the lights. They worked hard to get those set up, and you may burn yourself, and you may break it, and then be responsible, and all this stuff. It's just like, touch your own stuff, worry about your own stuff, please. You know, if you're a grip, maybe don't talk directly to the actors telling them what to do. If you have a suggestion, go to the director or the AD, you know. Because it's not as organized as, you know, a unionized set will be. But for me, it's still really important that things are organized in an order. And to me, I'm like, listen, if you have a suggestion for someone else's job, come to me and tell me privately, like pull me aside. But I don't want to hear like someone from the crafty department telling the gaffer how to set up a light. You know, like, I appreciate, you know, if you have an opinion or a suggestion, but it comes across like almost condescending. But also it's kind of just like a professional thing, you know, like try and do your thing. You know, if you're somehow connected, like if you're an AC talking to the cinematographer, or if you're the gaffer talking to the cinematographer, that's one thing. But I think the main thing I realize is just people who are more in the technology or rigging departments speaking to the actors, telling them what to do. And I'm like, whoa, let's back that up, because then the actors start getting confused. They're getting notes from all sorts of people. They're like, who do I listen to? All sorts of stuff. So, you know, I just went off on a tangent, but
no, I mean,
I feel like
but that's correct also, because I've told like my crew, I'm like, listen, I'm like, don't give them instructions on like what acting they need to do, but if you need to have them move because of a sound issue or a lighting issue, talk to them. Don't come to me, talk to them. Because if that's a thing where you need to know how to light them, then come talk to me. Be like, hey, how does this look? Is this what you're wanting? Is this not what you're wanting? Like, tell me. And that makes my job easier, because it's not like I'm doing 800 things as a director and a producer and as an AD and as a DP. And 90% of the time, because at least with my school, a lot of people flake. So we have an issue. I think
that's a student thing.
That's just a student thing of they wait because there's a better opportunity. And it ends up turning into, you know, you had 10 people on your crew to then 5. And so then you are honestly then doing multiple different jobs on like every single set. Like, I've been the director and the camera operator. I've been the director and the director of photography and the camera operator. I've done like director and sound. Like the combinations, unfortunately, are like very mixed, and you never know what you're gonna get until day of, because you could have somebody call out day of and be like, oh, I'm sick, or oh, I got called into work, so now I can't go.
Yeah, I think it's at least in my experience, it's kind of rare to find someone with good work ethic. You know, I wouldn't say it's a generation thing. I just feel like it's just a human thing. It's very understandable if you're not getting paid, and maybe it's not your passion project, or maybe you're being forced to do it somehow. But to me, it's always shocking when people show up on set and have not read the script, or like the call sheets that I spend hours on, not reading those. Things like that is very frustrating, especially when they ask you questions that were already answered. You know, it's like, okay, clearly you don't care enough about this project, and I should have gotten someone else. You know, and again, if you're being unpaid and, it's long hours, it's student stuff, not everything's as professional as you wish, that's totally understandable. But it is very frustrating when people are flaking out, or, when you have like all right, this is the date we're going to do, you sign on, and then they're like, oh, I didn't know it was that date, like 2 weeks later, and it's like, whoa, we had this conversation. Like, it wasn't just like, hey, what about this date? It was like, hey, it is this date. Are you good?
Yeah,
yes.
like we've been texting about it. We've been checking in. We've sent the lookbook. We've sent everything. Are you still on for this? And it's like, oh, I can't. It's like, yeah, we asked you like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks ago if you were still on, and now you're not. That's a problem.
Yeah. And again, like, if you don't care to be on that set, you don't always have to be passionate about everything you're on. Like, I've been on plenty of sets where I've not cared for my position or the project at all.
But
or maybe even the people I'm working with.
But you make the most out of it, because it's like, regardless, it's like, do I not like it right now? Yeah, but is it a credit that I can put on my resume later?
It's a good opportunity, a networking opportunity, and a great way to grow your team working skills, and, just your experience as a person and as a filmmaker.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But, okay, well, this was the first episode of Dizzy Directors. You can follow us at Dizzy_Directors. I think it is on Instagram, and I will put like a little link at the end of the video, and hope you guys enjoyed the first episode.
Bye.
Bye.